All right, welcome to Life's Not Linear. I am the host, Tara Romani, and today we have our guest, Sue, and I'm so excited to have her introduce herself and give us her background. So, Sue, you have the mic.
Thank you, Tara, for having me. So my name is Sue. My full name is Sue Marinello. I go by Sue. I am 33 years. Whoa. It's COVID. We didn't have a birthday this year, so 33. I'll say 33. I'm a mom of two and a self-employed artist. I do a full range of things on the art spectrum, but I just like to call myself an artist. So I started as an artist, I think the age of 15. I begged my grandmother to buy me a camera, and at the time it was all film. Everything was film still. And I was like, Grandma, I'm going to be a photographer when I grow up. And my parents won't get me a camera, and I've loved cameras, and my mom doesn't have a camera. And she literally took me to the best photo store that still exists here in Miami, Florida. Took me to the store, and she like walked up to the counter and she's like, my granddaughter is going to be a photographer when she grows up, and she needs the best. What do you have? And I just remember that moment like so well. And I still like have fond memories because she was like the first person to like believe in me and I'm gonna get emotional.
No, me too.
She was like the first person to like actually believe in me and be like, yeah, you're gonna be a photographer. So I didn't I didn't have a lot of faith in myself, but I knew I loved I loved taking photos. And I started in a high school photography class in 9th grade, and just was like fell in love with taking portraits. Portrait photography is like where my forte is. And then, later on in life, as I developed my career about 10 years later, after doing like travel photography and portraits, like in high school, I finally started my career as a photographer in about, I think it was like 2006, 2007. Like that's when I first had my first paying client. So that's when my photography career started. At the time I was doing portrait photography, and learned that the money in photography is in weddings. And I loved weddings. I loved planning weddings, like, whatever, I could do that. I could do that. So I shot my first wedding in 2007 and was like hooked. And that's where I started making my income was with weddings. It worked out because I was shortly after that, in about 2012, I became a single mom. And at that time was when my career was like really booming. I was doing really well, but a divorce really like took a turn on my artist life. I went into a really dark place, which is where my art shifted, not only to like what am I going to make money to support my family, but my two kids, but what's gonna feed what's gonna feed my family. Like everybody was like, my parents were like, it's time for you to go back to school now. I was 26 at the time. It's like, it's time for you to go back to school, maybe get like a real career, like be a nurse or something, which I mean really relevant to now. Yeah, could have done great and been under her at this time, but it just wasn't me. It wasn't me, and I was just very stubborn. And I think that's when I was like, I'm going to take this to the next level. Like, they don't think I could be a photographer. And so I did end up going back to school, but I was going back to school for me. I was like, fine, I'll go back to school. Let me go back to school for what I want to do. And so I went into studio art. And I went to Texas Tech, and that's when, I was still doing portraits. And at that time I was doing wedding editorials. So I started doing wedding magazines, bridal magazines, which was so much fun. When I got into editorials, I was like, it was a different experience for me because everything was very structured. It was, created for a, idea. And so I loved collaborating with other artists and writers are also artists. So I realized that like I loved working with writers and bringing their vision to life. So when I went back to school, that's when I started going into music. I was at the time now single, so I was going to all the live shows. I had never been to a concert, like 3 concerts in my whole life by the age of 27. And now I was like going to concerts all the time. I was like, what's this live music? And I met a photographer who was doing all the live shows. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so fun. Like I could be coming here for fun and like shooting. And he ended up graduating school and I took that as my opportunity. I was like, I walked up to the editor and I was of the writer of the magazine. And I was like, I'm going to shoot for your magazine. And he's like, okay. And that's all it took. Like, I mean, that's him and another editor of another magazine in Dallas. That's exactly how I got both of those jobs. So I think like it to, bring my story, like give a little motto to my story is like, I never let anybody say I couldn't like do it. And if I wanted something, I was going to get it like in any way I could. And money wasn't a factor at that point. So I was shooting a magazine for free. I was doing my weddings to support my family and shooting live concerts every night for free. And it was like fueling my career, like practicing my artistry in music was like giving me like this new life in weddings and portraits. So that was awesome. I also have done and during that time in school, like right before I went back to school, I was doing galleries. I did self-portrait work, a lot of art therapy. I went to everybody should get therapy, but I went to a really great counselor, and she was like, during my dark time, and she's like, do you like any art? And I was like, well, I'm a photographer, and I would do abandoned buildings. I shot abandoned buildings, and that was my gallery work, was with abandoned buildings. She's like, I was like, that's like therapy to me. Like I go in, I'm invincible. Like I'm taking pictures of abandoned buildings. And she's like, no, we got to do something else. She's like, you're going to take portraits, self-portraits. And I did like a project for over a year. And literally I felt a difference in my mental health. I was doing galleries with my self-portraits. And so that also helped me in my personal life. So my photography hasn't only been like my passion, but it's also been my saving grace. It's healed me in a lot of ways. So, and we'll get to the art healing later, but that was all going on at the same time. I was doing galleries, and I'm like doing music, and I'm shooting weddings on the weekends. And, for a year and a half, I shot for the magazine, and I was moving to Miami. Like I decided I'm going to move to Miami, and leave the magazines. Like I was really, really sad to just pick up my whole career and move to a new state. But for personal reasons, I left, and I got to Miami, and that was the low in my career. So planning for that low, that was as an independent artist, we are an independent contractor, self-employed, we have to plan for the downtime, like the down months. And so, but at that point I knew I had seasons. My work was seasonal. Like I have to save for these times. Okay, these months I'm off. Like what else can I work on to like further myself as an artist? But this was like picking up my whole life and dropping it in another place. And I was in a deep state of depression because the music was over for me. Because, this country and Americana music, it doesn't exist in Miami as, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So that was definitely a low point. And when I got my creative block in photography, yeah. So, are we gonna good roll?
Yes, no, this is great.
Okay, awesome. So that's when I hit like my rock bottom. I call for my artist life. I was like really shooken up. I was like, am I really making the right choice? Like even my divorce wasn't stressing me on, and I was stuck in Texas for a long time. Like, and that was, I felt like that was a low for me, and it actually fueled my art. And when I got here and my art was gone, all my galleries, all my connections, like everything was over. Social media could only take you so far at that point. We're talking like 4 years ago, which is still not a long time ago, but yeah, it definitely put a halt on my career. And that's when, I let all the voices come in, and like people being like, you should become a realtor, or like you should go and do this technical school, or you should go and like, maybe not do photography. Like, you're not doing anything now. What are you going to do? And it was hard because now people close to me, like my family, were seeing me on an everyday basis. They weren't seeing me working my ass off over, in Texas. They weren't seeing that lifestyle. They thought this was like me the whole time. Like, you just, well, you need to do bridal fairs and all this stuff. So that's when I had to like sit and reframe that was like my first quarantine, I guess, because I have a picture, like I took self-portraits during that time, and I have one of me and my kids, and it was very interesting to like look at that photo now. And that was like 4 years ago, 2016. And look at and think of now, and I was like, wow, this plays really well for quarantine, like this sadness of like what next. And that was my sit and like back to the drawing board. So I had started in production. I did a music video and since I was working music, I did a music video in 2013. And this was now 3 years later. And I had a friend who worked locations in production here in Miami. So I started like picking up a couple jobs, like shooting locations and scouting for productions here and there when I was in Miami. But not very like often. It's very competitive. Like and if you don't have a way into production here, like, it's really hard to put your name out there, especially since they don't go by resumes. It's like literally who you know and whose work ethic you can like depend on. So after some time working with her, I was like, I'm going to film a documentary. Like, I'm going to do this trip that I've always wanted to do with my 2 kids. Like, I've been thinking about this trip for 3 years now, and I'm going to like do this. Like, I'm not doing anything. I have this money saved up that's not going anywhere because I'm living with my parents and I don't have a place to live and all my stuff is in storage. Why not? Now is the perfect opportunity to go on this trip. And everybody thought I was crazy. So I was going to film a documentary with my 2 young kids who were at the time like 7 and 10. They were young. I was going to film for 3 months on the road with my 2 kids and basically go and meet people who were following their dreams, following their passions, and actually doing it. Like, kind of like me. Like, I wanted to find other people like me that like defied the odds and actually like were doing whatever they wanted. Like, it doesn't have to be an artist. It could be anything. And, just fulfilling that dream for themselves. So, and I was going to do it. So for about 2 months, a month and a half, I prepped for this production. So I really dove into like learning the ins and outs, like what it takes. I already knew location scouting. I had maps charted out, how much money it was going to cost. So I had budgets, I had maps, I had casting. Like, I had already cast. If I couldn't find people, I had known people around the US that I was going to interview. So I had planned to like go and just see where the world took me. And literally that's what it was. It was like, I have a map, I have a budget, I know what I can and can't do, and I'm going to let the wind take me. And I did it for 3 months. And that was the hardest part of my career because I was doing a passion project and people thought it was absolutely insane and that was dangerous. And how can a woman go with her 2 kids by herself around the country and be safe? And like, aren't you worried? And what a waste of money, what a waste of time. Like, everything. I mean, I could have chosen, I don't know, like, it was so strange that was like the biggest hell that I got for my career of all time, was like this documentary. And so I was like, screw you. I disappeared for like 3 months and literally talked to 5 people. So no, I got off all social media. I did not chart it on social media. It became like a individual like journey for myself as well, like to find myself and to like accomplish something. And I did. I came back and I had filmed for 3 months, and it took about like another 6 months to actually get some more work in production, but it gave me like the foundation, what I needed to like know production, what it takes. And hey, I really love filming. Like I would produce this for somebody. Like I know how to do this. So that's where I went into production after that trip. So it was kind of like my artistry evolved. Like it was constantly evolving. And what I learned was to not be afraid of evolving your craft. Like I think people get stuck and they're like, why isn't this not working anymore? And they're scared to change. I work with a photographer who's like, she's older, and she her dad was a photographer too, and they did editorials, and I worked on her crew. And now during this time, she's like, she's lost of what to do, because she's been a photographer like this for over 40 years. And what is she going to do? And she doesn't want to do anything else. But she loves dogs photography, and like, you know, like being willing to evolve with the time, I think is what it takes, and realize that you're not going to be the same artist or business person like 5 years ago as you are today. So, and embracing that change. So yeah, now I work production full time. I do still do editorials. That's my love for portraits and editorials will never like fade. I'm still a photographer. I mean, I told my grandma I was gonna be that photographer, and I still am. But my love for production and big projects has blown up, and maybe one day one day I'll win a Grammy or an Oscar.
I think so.
Yeah. You know, it'll go on from here. But yeah. So yeah, and I've been doing that for about 3 years.
Thank you for sharing like your awesome timeline. I have so many questions, but the first one, I want to ask you about the documentary, and how was that, you know, you were like, you know, F it, I'm going to do it. How was that traveling with your kids? And then how you said it was kind of healing for you. You were like off social media. You kind of quarantined, I guess, a little bit. Just could you dive more into how that experience was and like what you learned from it?
Yes. Okay. So going back onto like the quarantine idea, quarantine is like great. It's like cocooning yourself, and allowing yourself space to evolve and to like change and to not listen to the outsiders. I mean, we have enough of a inner critic that lives inside of our brain that tells us we're stupid for trying anything new, or like we're not good enough. So we already have that voice we got to combat in the back of our head, you know, until it's a quiet down. But it's enough when you have that voice, and then you have everybody else and all the comments and all the freaking like, you know, everybody knowing what's going on in your life at all times is like very stressful. It's like keeping up with some kind of status quo, and it takes you away from the actual moment. So during that time, I was quarantined, social media, you know, detox. And it was the first one. I was very active on social media. I had already had like a really great following, like, you know, for my urbex and music photography. But like, I was like, this is something brand new, and I don't want people to see what I'm doing, because I don't want anybody, first of all, to give me their first comment and like bring down my energy, you know, like bring down my self-esteem of like, I can do this. So I think that was very important for me to actually cocoon and be like, I'm going to do this. And at the end, I'm going to show everybody what I did. Like, and so that was important. Traveling with my two kids was so enlightening. I decided to homeschool my kids that year. That was 4 years ago. We're still homeschooling today. So if that's anything like an indication, like it was, I took like full reins of their education, and it made me more like interested in like teaching them more stuff and realizing that as a parent, every moment is a teaching opportunity. And if you're not teaching, like if you're not like correcting or like that child is gonna like all of a sudden go way over here, and so it was just like a time for us to be together and like constantly be on top of in the know, like what's going on. So had a lot of togetherness time. As far as traveling, we had a really great system. I have great travel tips, like to travel with. We road tripped, and they were like great in the car. And they were just curious. And it was interesting because I'm traveling with my kids and I'm filming this whole thing. And it became like a child's perspective of places I already had been. Like, so like I spent some time in New York, and I had already been there for work. Like I shot Fashion Week there, like, but I'd never been there for like such an extended period of time with my two kids. And I saw everything in a new perspective. And I realized that in traveling and not even just traveling, just in life, like we should look at everything through a child's perspective, like in wonder and awe. Like, I don't know everything. Like, I want to learn more. Like, I know New York, but I don't know New York, like I don't know New York with kids, and now I do. Like, so, yeah, just seeing things from a new perspective, which was a good theme for me, like, that's played on to the rest of my life and came from that trip, is like change perspectives, like definitely, being excited for life again, and like being excited to be together, because I can't bring back those moments, but those moments like live within me. They're so special, to have spent those with my kids. So was it hard? Yeah, but what I was saying during the time is like, I never let my kids be something that held me back in what I wanted and my life. And I think they see that, and they like, especially as a mother, the father usually works, and like they have to do that, dad has to go to work or whatever. But I was a mom and I had to work, but I was working, doing what I love, was happy and excited. So when they saw me go to work, they're like excited for me, they're like, how was work? And like, even now they're like, what was the music video like? So they're like excited. So it brings a different perspective too, as they're growing up, like work something you're like excited for, that you love. Like, and I was working with my kids, they didn't hold me back from my work, and they were important, they were important enough for me to take with me. I wasn't going to leave them behind. I'm going to take you with me, and we're going to do it together. So I think that was really important, during that time, children, like, and notice the importance of educating children. Like, so I don't know.
That's awesome that you can have like so much togetherness. I feel like I haven't looked too much into homeschool, but I just, now that I'm like out of K through 12 and I'm out of higher ed, and so now I can like kind of reflect and look back, it's like crazy. Like you said, everything is a teaching moment, or everything, like if you're not teaching, then you have no idea what's going to happen. And going from, I imagine, like if your kids are in school, like K through 12 school, it's a one size fits all. It's the curriculum and everybody has to learn it. But like if you get to homeschool, it's like so much more open, many more perspectives, like much more exploration. And so I think I'm jealous of your kids. That's awesome that they got to like do that with you.
Yay. Thanks. Yeah, tell them that when they're older too. Remember?
I will.
You're so lucky. You're so lucky.
Just show them this video, like, guys, this is it.
Yeah. And with that project, like, as an artist, I think we're scared to walk away from projects when they're not completed. And I did. I walked away from because it wasn't complete. And that was really hard for me, but it opened the door to so many other, like the other day I was telling somebody, I was like, but I'm sad because I can't complete a project. I can't complete this video.
Okay, awesome.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I was, and I knew this was gonna happen too.
It froze, and I was like, I paused the recording. It's okay.
Yeah, so being scared of like not finishing something, she's like, but you look at how many music videos you finished, like they're on like online. So seeing things again from another perspective, like that was what opened the door for me to be like, I want to do production, like I want to do this, and I want to make other people's ideas come to life. One day mine will be done. Yeah, when they're older, they look back and they're like, oh look, mom finally finished her documentary when we were like 7 years old. It's great, and gives me time to also change perspective. When I first started my documentary, it was a totally different meaning than when I finished it. Like, and even now, like the people that I filmed and documented, now seeing them 3 years later and seeing how their dreams have evolved and changed and what are they still doing, I'm like, maybe another 5 years would be great to see where they are then. So yeah, giving everything time and realizing that nothing stays the same for very long.
How have you, because I'm really struggling with that, like so many shifts and perspectives and changes. How have you been able to like roll with that and accept it? Because part of me is like, yeah, like change is good, but the pace at which things are changing in my life, I'm like, oh my God, like this is fast. So how have you been able to like accept changes or see these different perspectives and then like form your own opinions around them and move forward?
Oh geez. Time is an illusion.
Yeah.
Time is such an illusion, and it's like really interesting because when you're like focusing on how fast time is going, it actually starts going really, really slow, and when you're like trying to finish a project, you're like, oh my God, I have so much to do and there's no time, so it's interesting. I think my children taught me that because they have gone a lot of changes in their life, and the roll with the punches, it was just like they acclimated to something new. Like it was just, they adjusted. They like were just like, hey, we still have love from mommy and daddy. Okay, great. Still have all these awesome people around us. Great. Like we're having fun. We aren't missing anything like of our lives. Awesome. Like, and then everything else is just like a climate change. So just like learning to take the heat when it's hot, and then like learning to like slow down when you need to. This has been educational for me because I don't slow down. I'm probably can relate. Like I need to have like another project. I need to and clean something, let's organize this, or like, I need to keep going. And it's been a moment for me to actually just sit and clear my mind and let my intuition guide me instead of being like, I need to know what's coming next. And in reality, with everything, you don't know next. Like your life can change from 1 minute to the next. And how are you gonna roll the punches? And you know what? Humor is really important. I think we said this yesterday. Like we need to laugh more. And it is. We need to just laugh. I also learned this from my cousin. When we were younger, we were coming home on the boat from the Keys, and his boat catches fire. And like we're like a big family vacation, like 2 boats, and we're on the jet skis, and we roll back and like, oh my God, the boat's on fire. Like, get family off of the boat. Like the helicopter comes, the news, whatever, at the end of the day, we're laughing And we're like, what? Like his boat just burned down. And we're like laughing because my cousin finds his jersey, like his Miami Heat jersey, and it was Dwayne Wade. Like, and this was back 2005. Like, he's like, oh, I got my jersey. He's like, this can take the heat can take the heat. And it's
Oh,
just like learning to see things from a new perspective. Like, even though some tragedy just happened, we were able to find humor together with our family, with our loved ones. So, I think it's really just learning to reach out for support when these kinds of times happen, because we all experience them. And if we can learn to find the humor and just like sit and let ourselves clear our minds and let things come to us, like our mind will reframe itself. But first we got to get out of that dark hole. Like, oh my God, my life is over. Like, my career's gone. Like, I don't have a house. I'm like homeless, but like, and I have no money, no income. Like, thank God my parents feed me. Like, you can go down that hole really, really fast. And if you have like a good support to like hold your hand so you don't like fall down that hole so hard, So I think like finding good support and like taking care of your mental health, like, and like realizing it's okay to mourn and to grieve loss. And when these things happen in our life, it's kind of like grieving a lost part of yourself. Like the Susan in Texas died. Like she's, and now I realize that I'm still being published with some stuff. I've been in like 6 Texas magazines, and I didn't realize that until like yesterday. But she died, but I'm like, she's lost and forgotten, but she's not. Like she just lives on in a day, and now, like, so yeah, learning how to grieve a loss and laugh and support.
thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
I like that perspective of like, just, obviously being okay with grieving, but not just the people around you, but the parts of yourself as well. Um, and like acknowledging them and learning from them. I think it's super important to just like, give yourself a hug and also like appreciate like where you've been and where you are. Um, Kind of going off of this topic, I want to talk about like the art healing and the art therapy that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, you just go.
Yeah, go whatever you want to start with, whether it's the galleries. I mean, I am wondering about the self-portrait part as well, but if I don't know, wherever you want to start, if it's like
Okay, cool.
background.
So I'm gonna like go from right now to like backwards.
Cool,
So
I'm ready.
right now I am a volunteer crisis counselor for the crisis text line. And basically helping people in times of crisis come out the other side and seek help in other ways, but like getting people out of crisis mode. So kind of like a suicide prevention line, but it's all texting. And you could text pound 741 and you get connected to a crisis counselor. So another form of support. If you are in this dark hole or if you don't know where to go, like there's always a start.
Okay, cool. So you were talking about kind of the crisis line that you volunteer with.
Crisis text line. We went to art, a crisis counselor, opened my eyes to art healing, art therapy, and it was like one thing after another. Like everything just like, kind of started aligning in my life because I always wanted to like give back with my art. And this was like my art healing. So this was something that I kept very private to myself, my self portraits, but I would post them online, my self portraits, because I had a really good photo community on Google Plus at the time. And it was like a board for me to like express, share my pain, share my darkness, and then like get filled up again and like release. It was like a release to like post and release. So I wanted to go back to, so when I went back to school, I was going back for this art therapy. When I realized I had to go get my psychology degree, I was like, this is a lot of years. My kids are getting older. I'm going to be finished by the time my kids are in college, like, and just going back to college with my kids. So life took me in other paths, and I decided to keep my art therapy to myself. Like I would just use it for me, to kind of express. My art therapy has like evolved too. Like now I doodle. It's been like really my new creative outlet is like doodling. So I learned in art and art history that art, Leonardo da Vinci, he did all types of art. He didn't just, sculpture, he painted, he did all sorts of stuff, like made stuff, tea kettles, I think. Anyway, like he tried all mediums of art. And so I was always told to like try every kind of medium of art. So if you're a musician, try to paint, or if you're a photographer, make a sculpture. Like, so when I went back to school, I wasn't really doing photography because I had already had a career in photography. I was going back for sculpture. So I learned that and was just like, practicing my skill of creating. So art therapy is something that you can actually go to an art therapist, which is kind of like a psychologist that helps you heal through your art. So I'm an art healer now. Like I did not go to school for art therapy, but I feel like my art heal. I have been able to heal myself with art. So I took some classes to kind of find out how other forms of art like help heal you. So like writing and making music and gardening is even a form of art healing. So basically what art healing is using art um, to be like your catalyst for healing. So when you go to a therapist, you talk things out. They're usually asking you questions and you're bringing up stuff and you're exploring yourself, like having these conversations with yourself that you don't usually have by yourself. You're usually like thinking about the problem and like, how this problem's about to get worse. But with a therapist, you talk things out and come to like, a solution to how we can make these better. In art healing, you become your own healer, and your art is basically all that you want to say out of you. Like, it's really hard for me to explain this. This is actually difficult for me to explain. But I become like a vessel, like a safe space for you to create and to also talk. Like most of the time, as a crisis counselor, most of the time, these people are like about to commit suicide. And by talking to them, we are able to bring them back to a place of like peace, of like what makes you happy right now. And one of the things we recommend is like, do you like music? Like that was like the first thing that most people, it makes them feel better to just listen to good music. Do you like to sing? Do you like, what kind of things will make you feel better right now? Oh, you like to paint. Go get a coloring book, start coloring. So just by like creating, you are able to like create something outside of yourself. So if you're now putting your your childhood trauma into an art piece, you're like taking that childhood trauma out of you, putting it on paper, and now you can physically see it. And it's almost like a purge of like a purge of something, like like giving it over. Like, and you can do anything with this. You can burn it, you can like post it, you could share it with others. And what I was learning when I was doing art healing is that my art healing was healing other people as well. Like when a lady came up to me at a gallery and she's like, oh my God, that image, like I almost committed suicide. And my art was really dark in that area. And she like told me her whole life story just with one photograph. So it was as if we got to share and like, and find compassion for one another and like find relief. So, art is therapeutic. We are all creators, and yeah, it gives you like a vessel to create something different for yourself or remove something hard, and I don't know, seeing it on the outside.
That's incredible. I think it sounds scary to me, but I also think it's so like beneficial and useful. So I love that you kind of were able to discover that. And I'm wondering specifically to your self-portrait series, um, how was that for you? Because I find that looking in the mirror is hard. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine like taking pictures of myself and then having to look at them.
It literally was like uh very vulnerable. You become vulnerable and you learn about vulnerability. So that's where I like first learned that vulnerability is okay. Like I think we hear the word vulnerable and we think like fear and like attack. And like if I open myself up to people, I'm open to being like attacked, but being vulnerable like really just it's actually very freeing. So I had never seen myself cry. Like I mean, I guess I had seen myself cry in like in FaceTime or whatever when I'm like talking to somebody, but like to see myself um so sad, and it almost gave me it, and being that vulnerable to a camera, like I mean, I did a lot of different kinds of self-portraits. But to actually see myself and love myself, like it showed me that I was like, I loved myself. I loved myself even sad. Like, wow, I look so beautiful crying right there, you know? And it was like seeing myself in a different perspective, and then like seeing how my evolution, like during that time was like, oh, wow, this one was really happy. You know, I was very inspired to do a happy portrait at this point. Maybe like what was going on then? Like, um, so it was very nerve wracking because I hate photographs. Like this is very hard for me too. Like I hate photographs. I love being on the other side of the camera. And before I did this self-portrait, I interned with a photographer in Utah, and I was like, he was an amazing portrait photographer, and I was like, I want to be this amazing one day. And he said to me, okay, well, have you ever been on the other side of the camera? I was like, well, no, like I've never had a photo shoot. Like I didn't really have photo shoots. You know, everybody does maternity and baby photos and family photos. I had like one family photo. My kid was 6 already, you know, and I was already divorced. So he's like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to intern one whole day. You're going to be on one side of the camera and then we'll switch. You get to shoot me. Like we'll go back and forth. And I was like, wow. And even that alone, like seeing myself this is why I love portrait photography, because I get to show you how I see you, you know? So I'm like, you know, I love making people feel good and bringing out that power inside of themselves and making women feel like powerful and successful, and men, you know, with their families, like show them that soft side of like love and joy. And so in that moment, I was like, wow, I look good. And this is nerve wracking in front of the camera. Like people aren't used to being in front of a camera, and I get to like work with that and make them feel comfortable. So it showed me so much just getting on the other side of the camera after having shot for so long, like getting on the other side, that I was like, wow, that evolved my creativity in my portraits. Now I was shooting myself from my perspective. So, and then I realized I didn't like how anybody shot me. Like after that, like I was doing all my self portraits. I'm like, I don't like pictures that anybody takes of me. I like my pictures. And I mean, I was shooting myself from really weird angles, and like, so it was giving me a chance to see myself in all different perspectives, in all different angles, and like creating the Susan I wanted to be. At the end of that, my portraits were great. People were like obsessed. They're like, we want portraits like that too. And then I was doing galleries with self-portraits. So being vulnerable actually opened me up to being able to evolve, and like evolving on in front of my camera. Like, I mean, yeah, did I Photoshop? Hell yeah. Like, but who's going to Photoshop me better than me? So I learned so many Photoshop techniques and just doing self-portraits, you know, like it's very interesting. So yeah, being vulnerable opens you up to also being able to change. hey, I don't like seeing myself sad. I don't like seeing this moment of me. I get to evolve this. So yeah, bringing it back to like being okay with evolving and change, because we get to. We're humans. We get to do whatever. We get to create ourselves. This is our life.
Mhm.
Like, So yeah, definitely that art healing has helped me, in the 8 years. Like I still dive into, like, now I write more, so just give it like back to art healing, like encouraging people to not just make art to make money. Like this is, if you're doing art to make money, then like you're in it for the wrong reasons. First of all, you might as well go be a doctor to make money, you know? But like, why are you creating, and are you recreating yourself, and are you always evolving your craft? Are you always learning? And that's what it teaches me, that I don't know everything, and I still will never know everything in photography or in my own life. Like I get to keep evolving my craft, my personal life, like, and everything, make it all work together. So it's not work. It's just, creation.
That's awesome. Thank you for being vulnerable on this
Thank
like interview and for sharing many of the things that you've learned and like many of your experiences. I have taken a lot of inspiration from this, and I'm excited for others to view it as well and have their own perspectives and develop their own inspiration.
Yay. Yeah. Always change your perspective. I really like, I can't emphasize that more. In art school, one of the basics that you learn is like, okay, you're done. Now put it up and step back 2
Mhm.
feet. Okay, now step back 5 feet. Okay, now step to the side. Now, how do you want to show your art? What perspective do you want people to see? And then being open that people are going to look at your piece of art and they're going to see their own perspective.
Mhm.
And what it really like what makes you realize is that everybody has their own perspective. Even if they're both experiencing the same thing at the same time, they're going to have their own perspective, their own experience. And you know that means that you can step back and see something in a different way, and laugh, and or cry, or so yeah, being willing to change your perspective and evolve is how you get through the hard times, and how you become the best version of you, like, and do what you love.